and welcome to another episode of PodcastDX, the show that brings you interviews with people whose lives were forever changed by a medical diagnosis, and with experts who help us live healthier lives. I'm Lita. Jean Marie will not be with us today.
And I am Ron.
Today we're joined by a very special guest, Dr. James Thompson, a retired board certified allergist and immunologist. He's known for his work integrating nutrition into treatment plans for allergic diseases, and he's an advocate for whole food, plant based diets. These days, he serves as medical director of the Healthy Living with a Vision Foundation. Dr. Thompson, welcome to Podcast DX.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And, sir, could you please tell us you had a successful medical practice in Chicago and Orland Park. Can you tell us how you moved from a traditional allergy and immunology care towards focusing on nutrition and lifestyle medicine?
Sure, I'd love to. I moved to Sacramento, California about 1 year ago, but it was after retiring from 34 years in practice of allergy and asthma and immunology. I mostly saw people with asthma and skin problems and food allergies. And I really enjoyed my stint at that. It's just that about 15 years ago, I realized that I had a serious gap in knowledge about nutrition. And so that ended up prompting me to gain more information and get certification in nutrition coaching. And so I integrated that into my practice about 8 years ago. And it was just a wonderful thing. I just wish I had discovered this 20 to 30 years ago. At any rate, the reason why I ended up moving to Sacramento was because that's where my grandchild and daughter was or is.
Nice.
And so I wanted to be closer to my grandchild. And I have one in Seattle also. So I'm a little closer there also.
Okay,
Well,
great.
congratulations to you on the move. So you pretty much just answered the question that I had. If there was a turning point or anything specific that convinced you to change your focus. So it was because you felt you were lacking some of the knowledge in that area?
Yes, it was the first shot across the bow was about 15 years ago when my church conducted what's called a Daniel fast from the Old Testament. And our Daniel fast was designed where you would fast the whole day from sun up until 5 p.m. And then you'd break that fast with a essentially whole food plant-based diet. And we did it for 21 days. And midway through, I noticed I felt rejuvenated, that I slept better, that my bones didn't ache as much, my knees, because I was running on concrete to avoid more medicine for blood pressure control and to keep my cholesterol down. And I just noticed there was just a major change in mood and energy level. And I felt that it just couldn't have been just to the prayer. And that's what Daniel fast is mostly about, prayer, not food. But I thought it was probably a combination of the increased prayer, the healthier eating, and the praying. And so that's what sparked my interest. And it wasn't until a handful of years later that I actually pursued nutrition training. But that was really the spark.
Okay.
That's pretty interesting. I
Yeah,
like
very,
that.
very good. The fact that you had enough knowledge about it, about bodies and how they react in the background to realize that, well, the change that happened just now, it it's obviously has to do with the food and, like you were saying, the spiritual side. Let's talk about the connection between what we eat and how our bodies respond. For instance, well, okay, so how does nutrition affect allergies, inflammation, and chronic disease risk?
Yes, that's a great question. Nutrition is central to reducing and preventing chronic inflammatory diseases. Inflammation is at the root of just about every disorder that takes us out in this country and many places around the world. What happens even when you have tumor and a tumor or cancer and it spreads is it causes inflammation in the tissues and tissue dysfunction and damage to organs. So when you adopt a whole food plant-based lifestyle, you're adopting an anti-inflammatory way of living. Whereas if you eat the standard American diet, we often refer to as the SAD diet, that's pro-inflammatory. So it promotes inflammation. It can cause a lot of the chronic diseases that we suffer from, that involve the heart, that involve the lungs, diabetes, dementia. And so we even found that with COVID, with the pandemic, that people that had plant-based diets did better, had less severe COVID infections. Now, in terms of allergic diseases, just about all of them are based on inflammation. Hay fever, technically called allergic rhinitis, involves inflammation of the nose and the eyes. Asthma is inflammation of the lungs. Eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, is inflammation of the skin. So inflammation is throughout this process of disease, and by eating nutrients that drive down inflammation, we can be a lot healthier.
Okay.
Excellent response. I really
So
love that.
yeah.
I
So
really wish that most Americans would get on that bandwagon with you, because I've often said that the problem is the overprocessed food nowadays. But when people hear plant based diet, they think of things like vegan or nothing but salad. Can you explain what whole food, plant based eating really means?
Sure. Whole food plant based means that you are eating foods that are minimally processed. And the reason why I say minimally is because even when you chop up food or slice food, that's a way of processing it. But there are degrees of processing. Like a sliced apple is minimally processed. Apple sauce, where sugar has been added and preservatives, is up the ladder of more processing. Apple juice is even further along. You've removed the fiber, you've removed a lot of the micronutrients, and you just have this concentrated sugar, of which
mhm.
sometimes more sugar is added. So that's more processed. And then you have apple pie that maybe you find in the grocer in the freezer, which has barely any apple in it. And you look and there's look on the side of the box, there's a paragraph of chemicals,
Right.
and then ultimately you have gummy bears, which have no apple in it. So those are the degrees of processing, and about 60% of the standard American diet is processed food. There are
Okay.
10,000 chemicals out there that can possibly be causing damage.
Right, right.
So I've got a question right in front of me I want to ask, but before I do, it actually brings up another question, and maybe it's further down in here. But is the food that we have here in the U.S. processed so much more than in other countries? Because it seems like other countries don't have the same health risks or the same obesity rates as we do here. Is that because of the amount of processing that goes into the foods that we eat?
I think that plays a huge role because America set the standard. It was after World War II, probably during World War II, when industrialization just took off, and you had subsequent to that fast foods places
Mhm.
surging, and then you had the capitalism is, and I'm not faulting capitalism, but I'm just explaining that when your bottom line is to enhance the product's net profit,
Mhm.
then you're going to do everything you can to make it as desirable as possible. So food engineers found just the right formula of salt, oil, and sugar to make those taste buds just dance. Remember you
Right.
Lay's potato chips, you can't eat just one, you know. And so they do that with popcorn and everything. And so these foods are made to quickly be absorbed and quickly give you that hit
Yeah.
that makes you want another, makes you want more. And so that's a problem. And America is at the top of that. Europe has actually banned the number of chemicals that America continues to allow in foods.
Okay. Yeah. Again is why I asked the question because I'm certainly not going to get political here, but with some of the changes going on, we're hearing that some of these dyes and all that are starting to be banned now. And then they start delving into what's going on in other countries. And it's exactly what you just said, that they don't allow all those preservatives and all those other chemicals. And they appear, and I will just say appear, to be healthier than we are here.
Yeah, it depends on
Well, it's a fact.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's a fact. They are healthier. I mean, United States is way behind many of the European countries in terms of how much money is spent on health care and and the health span of individuals. A key example was the pandemic. What country was at the top of the list for people dying from COVID? And it wasn't because it was a different strain of virus, it was because our health risk factors were higher than everywhere else. We had more diabetes, more high blood pressure, more high cholesterol, more chronic diseases that made us as a population more vulnerable to COVID. So we had over 1 million deaths.
right,
Yeah,
right.
wow. So getting back to, and again, this is up is fascinating. With the whole food, plant based eating, how quickly can people expect to notice a change or benefit when they're making these dietary changes? And are there, well, I guess the short term effects as well as the long term effects? How quickly does this stuff make a change in your body and how you feel?
Well, the benefit starts within days
Okay.
because one thing that we found in the last decade and a half is the importance of the gut microbiome, those microbes, those bacteria in our gut, about 4 pounds of it that we used to think, oh, it's just there to be part of your poop, but it actually plays a huge role in the balance of hormones and in the robustness of the lining of your gut in every system, the cardiovascular system, the skeletal muscular system. Every system is influenced by the gut. So there's a lot of emphasis now on the gut microbiome. And when you eat plant based, you are feeding the gut what it wants: fiber. There's no fiber in meat. There's very little fiber in most of the processed foods that are out there. It's often removed because the more fiber you have, the less shelf life you have. And remember, processed foods are being driven to sell and make a profit, not
Right.
being driven to make people healthier. And
Right.
so what we're finding is that it makes a big difference in the composition of these foods and the chemicals in how we are able to live and how long we are able to live.
Yeah, this is not part of the script because I helped write the script. However, as you were talking about inflammation and the difference between the United States and other countries, I wonder if inflammation is the key that we're missing for all of the early childhood deaths, like during birth and pre birth, all of the people that are having problems going to term and delivering a healthy child. I wonder if inflammation is not affecting that because we have a horrible status as far as uh, production. I hate to say it as production, but delivering healthy, vibrant children with a healthy, vibrant mother attached. In other words, one or the other is injured or made ill during that process of birthing. And it doesn't happen in any other first world country.
That's very true, and it's very sad. And actually, black people, for those statistics, black people are twice as vulnerable for infant mortality and maternal mortality in birth and childbirth. It's very sad, but in terms of your question about whether inflammation's at the root of that, I think it might be an oversimplification, but yes, it's certainly a big part of it. You get into something called the social determinants of health, which are not limited to minorities. There's the socioeconomics can impact many different ethnic groups, but you're talking about housing situations, education, access to health care, access to health information, jobs, being able to move around community, exercise in the community. So we're talking about unsafe communities. So it's a very complex picture, but we are struggling with that in the United States. And yes, inflammation plays a key role.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, hopefully our listeners can get a little bit out of this episode and make some small changes. So let's get practical for
You
our
just
listeners
stole
who,
my thunder. I was going to ask that question.
yeah, for listeners who might feel overwhelmed, what are a few simple changes that they could make, let's say starting this week?
Well, you can first analyze or evaluate how many servings of plant-based food you already consume. They've done surveys, and the standard American diet averages only 2 servings of plant-based foods. And sometimes in some of these surveys, they include ketchup and French fries, which are not the healthiest choices for your plant-based, source. So you can start by listing foods that you like that are plant-based in 4 quadrants: your fruit, your vegetables, green leafy vegetables, the rainbow color vegetables that you see in the produce section, your whole grains, quinoa is a whole grain, corn is a whole grain, and there's a ton of other grains out there that we usually ignore or aren't aware of that can provide all kinds of nutrients. And then your legumes, your beans, and then you have your herbs and spices and nuts and seeds if you're not allergic to them. So make a list, 15 maybe, 15 items or so, and then make sure you start increasing your per day intake of one or more of those ingredients. And maybe at the same time, since I've mentioned that meat and dairy products are pro-inflammatory and they can lead to many of these chronic diseases, hypertension, diabetes, increase your risk for dementia, Alzheimer's. Maybe start with a meatless day. It's very popular to go meatless Monday because meat is not an essential food, and neither is dairy. And so I think once we grasp that concept and figure out why you need to do this, maybe you've seen family members younger than you have a stroke or a heart attack. Maybe it's been an uncle or an aunt. Maybe someone had one of the more common cancers: breast cancer, prostate cancer. These are all entities that can respond to changes in diet and lifestyle.
Excellent,
What
excellent.
about
Yes.
granola and also yogurt? Where do those stand?
Well, it's always relative to what, right? So if you say, I'm going to have the yogurt instead of that Snickers candy bar, you're ahead with the yogurt, or you're ahead with the granola. You're ahead with the granola, okay? If you're gonna say I'm gonna have yogurt instead of that milkshake, then you're way ahead with the yogurt. But you can be further ahead by, say, having a piece of fruit instead of the granola bar, or having some nuts and some fruit, or spending several minutes looking at the labels of the granola bars because, and I've done that, 90% of them just give you more sugar, sometimes more fat, many times more salt. And so they're not as healthy as they're cracked up to be. I found I found a couple that suit my needs and don't have so much fat and sugar. You want your bars to have more fiber in it than a whole lot of carbs. And so really it's a matter of reading labels to see what you're getting. Are you getting a lot of sodium? And then for yogurt's a dairy product. Many people that have lactose intolerance, of which more than 75% of African Americans have it, and many of Caucasians and Asians, about 80% have it. But with yogurt, it's often broken down so people can tolerate it and they think, okay, I can eat this healthy food even though I may be avoiding other dairy products. But the thing about it, you still get the milk proteins, still get a certain amount of fat and processing in it. Usually there's sugar in it. Usually there's fake fruit in it. So it's better to try to find a healthier yogurt. I found one. It's called almond yogurt. It's plain. It's based on almonds. There's no coconut oil added to it. There's no sugar added to it because I do like yogurt. So what I just exampled is that you can make substitutions. You can make healthier substitutions and still eat the kind of foods that you like. No, that may taste a little different, but you can rehabilitate your taste buds. It only
Yeah,
takes a few weeks.
absolutely.
So
I personally have done that with almond milk instead of whole milk or 2%. And it did. It tasted a little funny at first, but now and I don't drink it all that much, but it seems quote unquote normal now.
Right, right.
yes, that's been my experience too. I grew up on 2% milk.
Hmm.
But I love, now that all these years I've been using plant-based milks, I have no desire for cow's milk.
Okay.
So, a lot of people seem to think that plant-based eating is going to be expensive. How can families make buying plant-based food budget friendly because all the prices are going up?
That's true. But look at it this way. If you can avoid going to that butcher section
This is
where you usually get that meat, that steak and briskets and things like that, or in that fish section where you get those cuts of fish, if you're not paying several dollars for the meat and the dairy and the egg, but you're instead buying, say, in season fruit, dried goods like lentils, which are like pennies a day. You buy these dried beans. There are 12 different kinds of beans out there you can choose from. Grains are inexpensive, and teach yourself or go to various websites that can give you ideas on what to do with these. Then you can actually save. There's a website that is, I think, entitled $5 a day. Plant living $5 a day. That's not exactly it, but there are websites that are budget friendly that can really give you some guidance on how to eat and save much more money than when you were eating standard meal.
Thank you. I was also going to suggest how cheap a packet of seeds are. And if you have a pot on your balcony, you could grow a bean plant or a pepper plant. And, this way you get product after product, and all you did was plant it once. But that's for another episode, I think. What about for protein? Like that's the big question that we hear. Oh, if I don't eat meat, if I don't eat fish, if I don't eat eggs, if I don't eat dairy, I'm not going to get enough protein.
Yes, that's a huge misconception. What people often don't realize is every plant that they consume, every consumable plant has protein in it. What is protein? It's just amino acids that are linked together to form the protein. And so you get protein from kale, you get protein from cabbage, you get protein from broccoli, you get protein from fruit, you get protein from all the plants that you could eat. Now, will you get enough protein? So that's the question. And the answer is if you have a balanced plant-based diet, yes, you absolutely will. Most of the protein does hang out. I should say proportionally, the protein hangs out in the areas of the beans and the grains. And there's a significant amount of protein in nuts and seeds. So if you have a balanced meal plan that involves fruit, vegetables, some whole grains, some form of beans, pick any beans you like, and you're going to have some nuts and seeds every now and then, you're going to be fine. Most
Okay.
Americans get way more protein than they need. Protein deficiency is not a problem in this country.
That's for sure. And
So,
many chronic diseases, like you were saying, diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, they are affected by diet. And I'm
Absolutely.
sure that there must be research that shows how plant based eating and disease prevention can happen concurrently, right? Like, in other words, if the more you have plant based eating, the less disease you're going to have.
You're absolutely right. There's tons of information out there, research that supports that. There's the Adventist study, Seventh day Adventist. There's the Adventist study out of Loma Linda, California, 1 and 2. The Adventist 2 study showed when you break this up, this is a religious community uh, that abides by the body being its temple. So many of the Seventh day Adventist people are plant based, but they have degrees. Some of them are vegetarians. Some of them are pesca vegetarians, means they eat vegetables
hmm.
and fish. Some are lacto ovo vegetarians. Some are vegans. And they did a study that showed the more plant based and less animal products that you consume, the less chronic diseases and the longer you lived. Because they've been able to study this over a course of several decades. There are other studies too that have shown this. The Epic Oxford study in Europe showed this. There's a nurses health professional study and the health profession study out of Harvard. There have been many entities, not to mention the Blue Zones by Dan Butner in National Geographic, that showed that people that ate plant-based lived longer. They live past their 90s into 100, and they're functional mentally and physically, and more, and they're having more joy to their lives.
Okay. What about bone health? Um, we often focus on seniors with osteoporosis. How about a plant-based diet? How does that support bone health
Yeah,
for people?
calcium, right? I
Yeah.
think we need calcium and magnesium, and I don't know what else, but
Yeah, calcium, magnesium, vitamin D, they're very important. And people that are healthy vegans or that eat whole food plant based have tend to have great bone health when they are smart about or when they are aware of the balance of the nutrients that they should be consuming. Green leafy vegetables tend to have a lot of calcium. Soy has calcium. Many of the beans have some calcium and grains. So if you eat a lot of these foods and you're not having foods that are counter to that that can take calcium from the bone, and you're combining that with strength training, weights or bands, those rubber bands.
Hmm.
You, Dr. Neil Barnard, a renowned nutrition all over the internet, has a very catchy statement about this. He says, "You want to give your bones a reason to live." So it's not just about what you eat. You want to do weight bearing exercises and you want to walk, regularly. And between that and eating a healthy, whole food, plant based diet, you usually will do fine. Many people don't need the calcium supplements, but you'd want to work with your doctor about that. I don't want anyone to take anything I'm saying as prescriptive
Right.
because everybody has their own individual circumstances and risks, so they should talk with their doctor about it.
okay.
Right.
All
So
right.
for people that already have a chronic disease, is it ever too late to benefit from making changes like this and going to the plant-based diet?
It's never too late unless you're already 6 feet under, okay? I decided in my 50s to do this. I'm almost embarrassed to say it. I've been a physician for more than 40 years now, and I didn't realize this problem until 15 years ago, the problem of the gap in knowledge about nutrition. But it wasn't too late for me. I was on blood pressure medicines for 30 years. I'm sorry. Um, I was on blood pressure medicine, yeah, for almost 30, about 25 years. And I was able to shed I had three blood pressure medicines. I was able to get rid of all three after 6 months of going whole food plant based.
Wow.
Now, before my eyes were open, I thought, okay, I'll run every day. I'll run,
Mhm.
10 miles, 10, 15 miles a week. I'll get more rest. I'll meditate. I did everything I could. And that lowered my blood pressure medicines. It never eliminated them until I went all the way, got rid of all the dairy products and, really minimized the processed food, in addition to continuing to exercise, get
Mhm.
proper rest, things like that. Then I was able to shed medicines I've been taking for 25 years, including cholesterol lowering medicine. I had a high cholesterol.
Yeah.
Lipitor, I shouldn't mention brand names, but torvastatin was a medicine I was taking for about 10 years that I was able to get rid of because I found that my cholesterol off of it while I was um, plant based came down even lower. My last cholesterol was 150, and that's on no medications. So when you have that kind of benefit, even though you can't really feel it, that metabolic benefit right away,
Mhm. Right.
it's when you see those numbers, it's so encouraging.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
That's wonderful
excellent.
news.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think talking with you, you have convinced me personally that my change will be from this day forward. When I get a chai tea latte, I will get it with almond milk.
Okay.
I'm going to
Well,
start small.
if you get it from Starbucks, you're getting a lot of sugar, so be careful. I
Okay.
don't know if I
All
should
right.
have said that,
We'll
but
work. No, that
We'll
is.
edit that out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay.
But yeah, I will work on that next. But let's start with getting rid of the dairy. But let's talk about some myths that are out there, Dr. Thompson. What is one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about plant-based diets?
Well, one of them we mentioned, and that's the protein. That's probably the biggest one. Where are you going to get your protein? But we've already addressed that. Another one we've addressed too is where you're going to get your calcium, right? And then another one is, I'm going to be hungry all the time. And that could not be any further from the truth. If you have some guidance and you're doing this right, you're going to be full all the time, because the nice thing about whole food plant-based is you don't have to do portion control, because that fiber is going to fill you up. When you have fiber and you minimize the processed foods and the dairy and things that make you want to keep eating forever, you'll get full faster. I mean, what it's really popular now, these GLP-1 agonists, these drugs now that were repositioned for weight loss, that were for diabetes, these that people take injections, either once a week or daily. These drugs that they tend to hit receptors that cause you to stop eating as much. So they tend to make you full faster. They increase your insulin, um, and they increase insulin. Well, foods can do that. Foods like greens and foods like whole grains can also hit those same receptors if you eat enough of them. And you don't have to worry about eating too much, because you will get full and you will be satisfied. So it's really a matter of making those adequate substitutions. And, that's one of the bigger things. People think they're going to be hungry all the time, and they think they're not going to feel as well. And some people start this process, but then don't finish because they don't feel well, and they don't realize if they just stuck it out a little more, if they if they modify some things, making sure they had balance in their nutrients, then they would get that same feeling me and millions of other people have felt when they go whole food plant based.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. Another misconception, well, not really a misconception. Um, if you're allergic to soy or nuts, that means your plant-based diets are impossible for you. In other words, that's the only way that you can be plant-based is to eat soy or nuts along with everything, the green vegetables and all that. So how do you come back against that one?
Well, it's not true. First of all, if you're allergic to soy, the nice thing about that, maybe it's not nice, but the important thing to realize about it is that it doesn't mean you're allergic to nuts. You can be allergic to soy and not be allergic to nuts. Now, that doesn't mean I want people that are out there avoiding nuts because they're allergic, to soy, or avoiding beans because of that they should go out and eat it. No, talk with your doctor. But soy is a legume. So first of all, it's not going to be cross-reacting with tree nuts at all. Soy is in the bean family, but that family is what we call distant from other members, meaning that there are many people that are allergic to soy, but they can have chickpeas, they can have red beans, they can have
Oh, okay.
peas, they can have
Okay.
many people. I didn't say all. There are some
Yeah,
people that are
yeah.
extremely allergic where that's not the case, but that's why you work with an allergist to figure
Mm-hmm.
that out.
Mm-hmm.
I had many patients that were allergic to certain foods, but they could eat many other foods that they thought they had to avoid.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So realize now, peanut, we want to be very careful about peanut allergy, because there are people that die every year from peanut allergy. Often, and many times, probably more than half, they know they're already allergic, but it's hidden in something, or they went to eat at somebody's home,
Mm.
realize it. So you have to be real careful.
I've heard that
Yes.
one of the newest things that people are trying is to give their children tiny, tiny amounts of peanuts or something, starting at birth. Not that you want them to choke on a peanut. You know what I mean? Just like a taste of
To
something
build
on the
up.
tongue. Yeah, just to build up the resistance. Is that something that you've heard?
Oh, I'm aware of it. There was a study out of Europe that maybe about a decade or so ago, maybe a little bit over, where they introduced peanuts within the first 4 to 6 months of life and tracked people that were given some peanut. No, you don't certainly don't want to give an infant peanuts. But they
Right.
use peanut paste, and they tracked them with a cohort. That's a parallel group that did not get it. They were restricted, and these were people that were high risk already. They had history of eczema, they had history of allergies, or family history of it, and they found that people that were where it was introduced early were about 5 years later were much less likely to have peanut allergy than those that were restricted from it. So that really changed the whole concept and allergy about, at least about peanuts, not every food.
Right.
But what
Yeah.
want to be careful is if you think you're at high risk because maybe there's family members, siblings that have it, or there's some eczema in the child and you're concerned about that as an infant, don't just give them that. Have them first seen by an allergist because in this study they first tested them before they challenged them with with the peanut paste,
Hmm.
with the peanuts paste. It can be done either by skin test or blood test. And you want to make sure because remember, peanut is one of those that can be really lethal and really fast. It can cause
Mhm.
anaphylaxis, which may be life threatening and fatal. So you want to be real careful. Work with your doctor about it. But yes, there's a window of tolerance where if you introduce these things once they're eating table food and they're off of formula, don't do this under 4 months or under six, really even under the 4 to 6 month window is when you start to really introduce other foods. And that goes on for a while where introduction of these foods can make you more tolerant of them. So that changed the paradigm for allergists. We used to always say, well, if the mom was allergic or there's a strong family history, don't
Mhm.
have eggs. I mean, don't have fish, don't have peanuts or tree nuts.
Mm.
No more. We let the mom eat the peanuts and the tree nuts, and we don't stop these foods unless unless we suspect there's a problem.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So what about supplements? This is something I'm really interested in because I take several. Um, do people that eat a plant-based diet, do they still need to take supplements, or are those not necessary because of all the um, I don't know, what am
I
I
guess
looking for?
the whole food diet,
Yeah.
you're not taking that away by processing, so maybe you're already getting it by eating the whole food, right?
So are the supplements necessary then?
Many of them are not necessary. I used to take about, I'm embarrassed to say, I used to take about 12 pills, supplements, even when I thought I was eating pretty healthy. This was before I went plant based. And since I've done the research, I actually wrote about this in my book. I have backed off so many of them because many of them don't have proven value. Many of the supplements don't have in them
Okay.
what they tout they have in them. And then there's a question of even risk to taking some of them. Every vegan, every whole food plant based person should be taking vitamin B12. In fact, if you're over 50, whether you're plant based or not, you should be taking vitamin B12 because the acidity of the stomach tends to wane once you get into middle age and you don't strip that B12 off of the food. B12 is made by bugs, dirt, and feces, none of which we want to eat, right? So we want to have either get our B12 by supplement, which you really should because if you depend on certain foods, like nutritional yeast or fortified foods, it may not be enough. That may not be a steady enough. And the question comes, what happens if you're B12 deficient? You have problems with healthy nerve function, your brain function. You may have develop some numbness or tingling somewhere, and you have trouble making healthy red blood cells. Those are two things you don't want to have to deal with. In addition to anyone taking acid reducers, there's omeprazole,
Hmm.
that's Prilosec, there's various ones, many of them over the counter now, that reduces your B12 absorption. Metformin for many people that have diabetes, type 2 diabetes. That reduces your B12. So B12 is something that's really essential for many adults for one
Okay.
reason or another, and certainly if you're plant based. I also believe unless you're really working out in the sun regularly and you live in an area where the sun is a year round um, exposure for you, you should be taking vitamin D also. I take
Hmm.
vitamin D, I take B12. And then after that, I think it becomes personalized. If you're a
Okay.
salt restrictor like me, you may not be getting enough iodine. In the 1920s, Morton added iodine to salt, so we stopped seeing thyroid problems because of iodine deficiency. But maybe you're a salt restrictor like me, and that means you're not. If even if you're doing pink salt, Himalayan salt, they're not usually iodized. So, sea vegetables. That's camu, wakame, dory sheets. Those will give you some iodine, but that's not something everybody wants to go out and get. So you may need to take a supplement for that. I also take omega 3 because both my parents had and died from dementia. One had Alzheimer's, one
Hmm.
had Lewy body. And so I feel, okay, I must have some genes there. I haven't done my genetic studies for it because it's not going to change what I do. So I try to get my omega 3s from food as well as some supplement. But many people might get enough omega 3 from ground flaxseed, from walnuts, You even there's a little omega-3 in greens, and as well as hemp seed and chia seed. So you can get your omega-3 precursors. These are what's used for your body to make these long-chain healthy fatty acids by these foods.
That's great. It is very, very informative. And personally, I'm glad you mentioned that because it's exactly what I take.
Right, and I and
Yeah.
I think that I'm going to end up getting Ron a copy of your book. Uh, Doctor, can you
Mhm.
tell us more about your role with the Healthy Living with the Vision Foundation? What's the mission? What kind of programs are you leading?
Sure. Thank you. We're a 5-year-old 501(c)(3 charitable organization. So our mission is to provide health information and services to to communities of need. And we do that in person, primarily in the Chicago and greater Chicago area. So I fly back to Chicago for various events. We have one coming up October 18th where I'm going to present information about prostate cancer and nutrition. Someone else is going to present a one of my other colleagues in the foundation will present about breast cancer and nutrition. It's Breast Cancer Awareness Month this month.
Mhm.
And so we try to address these various disorders from a prevention standpoint. We do have a focus on pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes and diabetes in general in terms of management and prevention. We also try to introduce various technologies when we're in person, like we do some retinal evaluations. The founder of this foundation, Dr. Ansel Johnson, is an optometrist, so we've been able to have some contacts with those kinds of services. Blood pressure checking. We've showed people also how to do testing when it comes to COVID. So we try to focus on the needs of the communities. And we've done a lot of town halls virtually, so this expands to across the nation in terms of providing information about a number of these topics.
Okay, excellent. Well, I just looked at our calendar and I was going to post this episode on October 28th, but I just pushed it up to the 14th. And we'll try to get some word out for you so that hopefully you could have a bigger showing. Is that going to also be Zoom based that people at home can get in on it?
Actually, this may not be Zoom based. Probably post it, we'll post some of it on our website, healthylivingwithavision.org. But this won't be Zoom based. I do have another project that we do annually. I actually coordinated on behalf of the foundation. It's called the 28-Day Kickstart. It always starts the day after Dr. Martin Luther King holiday, which is on a Monday, always on a Monday. This for 2026, it will start on January 20th. And it goes for 4 Tuesdays. It is Zoom, it's 1 hour, and I recruit experts to talk about nutrition. Our theme this for 2026 will be helping to prevent heart disease, which is the number one thing that takes people out in this country and many places around the world. So
Hmm.
I'll have a cardiologist on hand, a dietitian, a health coach. I'll be giving a presentation, and I have a nutritionist too that will be kicking it off on January 20th. So I'm really excited about that. That will be a Zoom program.
Okay.
We had 500 people sign up for that last year. We averaged about 70 to 80 people in the Zoom room each Tuesday evening, but
Wow.
that's at 7 p.m. Central Time
Okay.
on those 4 Tuesdays. So
Great.
that is Zoom. Thanks.
Excellent. And I heard that you've also written a book on holistic health. Can you share our readers what they can expect from your book?
Yes, thanks for asking. My book was published in March of this year, and it's called Fearless Wellness: Transform Your Life One Step at a Time. It's a guidebook. I mentioned in the intro, it's not a vegan book, and I do want people to understand that vegan is not a diet. It is a lifestyle, but it's not a diet. Vegan is a social justice movement. So vegans, this is an aside, but a person can be fully vegan if they eat Oreo cookies and drink Coca-Cola and eat potato chips. That's not a healthy vegan.
I'm
But there
sorry,
are
I
no
don't mean to laugh, but that's usually what you think when somebody says they're vegan, that they're super health conscious.
Yeah. And that's why some of the research studies are tainted because they include some of these unhealthy vegans that eat vegan junk food. And those people are sometimes at more risk at dying or suffering than some
I'm going to
people
go
that eat.
out on a limb and say I was a vegan back in college.
Okay. Were you a junk food vegan?
Exactly. I mean, yeah. And again,
Yeah.
I'm joking, but I mean,
Yes.
I
But
didn't expect to hear that, but it was just it is kind of
well,
funny.
to your credit, while you were vegan, there were several less animals that were exploited and killed.
Right.
So that's what a vegan wants. That's their priority. But back to my book. Fearless. Fearless is an acronym. Actually, it stands for 8 pillars that I expand on in the book, and the F is for food, and that's first because that's probably 80% of the importance right there is
Mhm.
the food that you eat. So eat mostly plant-based foods, minimally processed, and then the E is for exercise. Nobody argues with the importance of exercise. We were just talking about bone health and things like that. It's very important to exercise regularly. The A is for avoiding toxins. Everybody thinks, okay, tobacco, alcohol, yes. There's information now that there's no safe consumption, no safe amount of alcohol that you
Right.
can
Right.
consume. So the less, the better. But then there's also those food toxins, those 10,000 food additives I was talking about. So that's where the processed food comes in, getting rid of that. And then the R is for restorative sleep. Most of us should be getting at least 7 hours. The L is for lessening stress. That may mean mindfulness, meditation, yoga. Those things tend to calm us down, help the cardiovascular system, help the gut microbiome. So this is the holistic approach. Then that second E is for engaging your mind, and that's mostly for people in my age group. I'm 67 years old, now retired. If you retire and go to the couch or the golf course, your brain's going to get flabby. So you really want to make sure you're exercising the brain too, not by just doing some crossword puzzles, but doing things that are more complex, working on projects, learning a new language, how to play a new instrument. That's where different parts of the brain are used, in your hands and your vision and your ears. So something complex. And then the last two S's, social energy. We found that there are hormone balances that really come into place when you collaborate with others, especially for the good of others. So, social energy. And then, last but not least, spiritual connectivity. Doesn't mean you have to belong to religion or anything. It is for me. I'm a Christian. But the thing is that something that, even yoga, some more philosophical awareness that can ground you, that you can call on it in a time of need. So that's a holistic approach, fearless wellness. And then I have several bonus chapters in there that talks about COVID and about cravings and about supplements and probiotics and those GLP-1 agonists I was talking about. I don't want to mention names, but there's several bonus chapters. Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
Good.
So, where do you see the future of nutrition and lifestyle medicine in mainstream healthcare?
Yes, that's a good question. I see it slowly coming around. Some of the mentors for me, the online mentors, are going to these medical schools because that's where it starts, right? I mean, I didn't get the training. I went to a competitive medical school, but I didn't get the training I should have in nutrition and understanding root causes and prevention. Right now, healthcare is sick care. You go to and that's the paradigm. That's the construct most people have in their mind. I get sick, I go to the doctor, instead of thinking about going to the doctor to stay well. And so by eating healthier and having these lifestyle changes, we change sick care to well care. How do you sustain health? So then you just go to the doctor if you do get sick, but most of your health and wellness occurs when you're at home, when you're in the kitchen, and when you're exercising. And so that I'd like to see that shift faster than it is, but it is shifting. Many doctors shift what they're doing based on patients. So I think this has to happen from the ground up instead of top down. And
Right.
so I remember I learned a lot from my patients. They'd come in asking me about new medicines that I have to go look this up. So I think what we have to do too is confront our doctors and let them know, okay, we're aware of this. You want guidance on how to eat healthier, and they should be able to give that to you, but they will need some training because they often get their health information the same place you get yours, off the internet. So
Right. 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 Well, Dr. Thompson, we really want to thank you so much for joining us
Yes.
today. Your insights on food and health are both inspiring and practical. If you could stay on the line with us while we finish up our show notes to make sure that we've got all the audio uploaded, and we'll let you know when that's done. For our listeners, remember, even small changes in your daily meals can add up to a healthier future.
And if you'd like to learn more, check out Dr. Thompson's work with the Healthy Living with a Vision Foundation and his book on holistic health.
We'll have links for both of those on our website.
Awesome.
And that's it for today's episode of Podcast DX. Thank you for tuning in. And remember, your next meal is an opportunity for better health.
This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regime. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have heard on this podcast.
Till
The
next
views
week.
and
I'm sorry, Ron.
That's okay. The views and opinions of the guests and hosts on this show do not necessarily reflect the views of PodcastDX LLC. We got to get the legal portion in there.
Yes, till next week.